Today is December the 6th, Tuesday, December 6th. It is 7:07 PM. We're starting off a couple minutes late. This is the meeting of the Personnel Board for the town of Westport, Massachusetts. And we will start the meeting off with a Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. We have a very limited agenda for tonight. Excuse the rustling here. We have one item to discuss, and that is a request by the Zoning Board of Appeals for a change in the job description of what is now the current principal clerk's position. We have here with us Roger Menard, who is the chairman of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Why don't you just begin, Roger, and tell us what you would like to accomplish
Okay,
here.
well, first, I'd like to start off with essentially how we hired Maria, as far as what her job description was when we hired her. So it was to be available, she's part-time. She's available 2 hours a day, twice a week, to interface with petitioners. Advise the ZBA chair, vice chair of any new petition, advertise the petition twice, send out notices to all the butters, attend the ZBA meetings, generate the meeting minutes, and generate the decisions. That was in her job description when we hired her. Also, the ZBA has procedural rules and regulations that we follow, and in there is a paragraph on what the role of the principal clerk is, and it pretty much references all those things I talked about. Now, she also does, there were other, and those are clerical duties that you would expect. That's a principal clerk's job. There are other things that aren't listed in there that she does that you would still consider to be principal clerk jobs. Like, for instance, all the documents that come in, the decisions, she has to write summaries. They have to go on the shared drive. They have to get loaded into the database. Those aren't listed as far as a job description, but I would think we'd still consider that to be a principal clerk kind of job. Over the past 4 years, her job has really increased in complexity quite a bit. I've been on the board now for several years, and our petitions are getting more complex. We need a lot more legal support because, first of all, the Zoning Board of Appeals are all volunteers. The only paid person is Maria, and again, she's part-time. So I'll go through some of the reasons that, how things have evolved over the years that make it a much more complex job. First of all, everything she does is time sensitive. According to state law, we have so many days from the time the petitioner comes in and fills out an application and goes down to the town clerk and get it stamped. We have so many days to have a hearing, and so many days to get it advertised, so many days for a hearing, so many days for meeting minutes, so many days for decision. And if we miss any of those dates, then legally the petition is automatically granted. And some of the times are like a week or 2 weeks. It's not like you get months to do this stuff. So time sensitivity it certainly is an issue. The other things that we've implemented in the past couple of years, and we've done this as a cost savings effort, is when petitioners come in, they meet with Maria. Maria sits down with them generally, and we'll talk about the petition, because let's face it, the average citizen coming in has very little knowledge about exactly how to fill out the application properly. If they fill out the form improperly, they check the wrong box, they don't sign the right spot, and they go to the clerk and they have it stamped, we are bound legally to hold a meeting. That costs the town money. Even if we sit here and say, you did this wrong. So we reject it, you go back and do it again. That doesn't make any, first of all, it costs the taxpayer, the petitioner, money, because he's got to reapply. It costs the town money, because
You have
even
to
though the
re-advertise.
board doesn't get paid, Maria does, she
Right.
still has to have meeting minutes, she still has to have a decision, she still has to advertise. What she does, because she has knowledge of the zoning bylaws and she's worked with us on the petition form, she can not direct the petitioner, but at least give them some guidance, saying, here's what you want to do, you know, that may require a variance, and that, you know, she can work with the petitioner or the petitioner's attorney. A lot of time it's the attorney or a representative of the petitioner, so that they fill out the form properly, so that when it comes to us, we can have a hearing and make a decision and not either continue it or reject it just because of an improper. And this has happened enough times that we decided, you know, to have Maria work with the petitioner to do this. And we've talked to town council about how to do this to make sure that in fact it's followed correctly. That saves the town money, saves the petitioner money. And zoning is not obvious. There's a lot of times, and I've been doing this for years now, and there's a lot of times that I still have to call the town council and say, we've got this petition in, and I'm not even sure which bucket to put it in,
Right.
or, you know, so the average citizen, you know, who hasn't been involved in zoning for 10 years is certainly at a bigger disadvantage. So that's important, because, like I said, that saves us all money. And that's something you wouldn't expect a clerk to do. Because in order to do that job, you need to know the legalities. By the way, she has a legal background. And she was on the zoning board years ago, for many years. So she has a good background in our zoning. She also has to interface with the petitioner's lawyers and to give us sufficient time to review everything. One of the things that costs the town a lot of money is continuing hearings. If we have a hearing for a petition, they come and they sit in front of us and they say, here's the reason why I want to build a building, move us, what? If they don't have all the documents with it, we cannot make a decision that night, because we just got the documents and we haven't had time to read them. So she works again with the lawyers to make sure that we get documents in sufficient lead time that we can look at them, so that we don't have to continue the hearing and then add more cost. One of the jobs that is probably most difficult is she has to directly work with the butters regarding procedural rules and regulations, as well as petitions, information and requests providing for documentation. So a lot of times, all the abutters get a hearing notice. If you're within 300 feet of the property, you get a notice saying something's happening to one of your neighbors. She will routinely get questions from abutters saying, what's going on, can I see the documentation, can I, whatever, and she has to respond to all those within a particular period of time. Maria is required, I said, to have 2 hours twice a week to be here, to be available for petitioners to interface with. But that's not when we have meetings. Our meetings are usually Wednesday nights, and she is required to be at those meetings. So, that's, beyond that's part of her job, but most clerks, that's not the way they work. You work in the town, and when your day is up, your day is up. She also attends, there's a lot of times, I wouldn't say a lot of times, but there are times when we do on-site visits. When a petitioner comes in and shows us documents, and we just, as a board, just don't get a feel for what they're trying to do. Sometimes it's just easier to go look at the property and say, okay, now I get it, now I see what you're trying to do, and we can make it. Well, she has to go and be part of that, because she would be the one then that would be generating whatever meeting minutes come out of that. That's generally on a Saturday, because it fits in mostly with the petitioner. It's easier for the petitioner usually to have it like on a Saturday. The legal aspects of this are really important. There are a lot of cases where we have to get advice from town council. Now, sometimes we know ahead of time. If we look at a petition and the petition is very complex and we know that the petitioner is bringing their lawyer and they are going to cite case study from some judicial review somewheres, us 5 ZBA members have no idea if that's valid or not. So generally, we will have town council sit in on that. There are a lot of other times, though, that during a meeting, during a hearing, we have questions about the legality of something and how to proceed, in which case we would then continue it and then get advice from town council. Now, that gets to be a little bit tricky, because under the Open Meetings Act, anything that is happening there, we have to consider as being part of the open meeting, because it is still an open meeting.
Right.
So the way that generally works then is that I will generally, as chair, I will generally contact town council and give them a brief, here's our issue, here's what we need. You work with Maria, because she's not a member. You can work with her to identify, okay, here are the rules, here are the state laws, here are the things that the zoning board needs to know to proceed with this case. She can then disseminate it. I can't, because if I talk to any other members,
Right.
that could be a violation
Exactly.
of the Open Meetings Act.
Exactly.
So, so she acts as our go-between with town council, and she does this quite regularly, and she goes back and forth with town council until we have enough information to proceed. Again, that's not something you would expect the town clerk, to be doing. She's acting as my assistant to, in legal cases. She has to manage all the correspondence between town council. She also is the only person involved if there is an appeal. In this past year, we've had one, a major one. But she was the sole interface to the town for all the appeal efforts, gathering documents, doing all the legwork to satisfy town council when they are hearing the case on an appeal.
So let me ask you, how would you say this differentiates from, say, the Board of Health clerk or the Conservation Commission clerk, or?
I don't think that they do any of those kinds of efforts, dealing directly with town council.
Oh, there's Greg.
But
Well, I would think that in the Board of Health, I would think, having not dealt with them directly on this matter, but that they have, the clerk in that office also has timeliness issues and interface issues, certainly with the public, with abutters based on hearings and so forth. I mean,
Well, okay, one other thing though, that there are 2 clerks in the Board of Health. We have 1 part-time clerk who has to do all of this work.
right.
So let me just sort of finish
Okay.
up. She's also responsible for all the efforts under the Freedom of Information Act. So we'll get a lot of requests from abutters, from private citizens to just say, I want to know about some petition 5 years ago, and I want a copy of all of it. She has to then take it all out, find it all out, and she has, again, so many days to respond. So she is solely responsible for answering Freedom of Information Act one of the things that the ZBA, because of issues that we've had in the past, the zoning board quite routinely now requires deed restrictions on, as part of conditions for approval. And in order to facilitate that, there are forms that Maria has, and then she works directly with the petitioner's lawyer or the petitioner to generate the deed restrictions, make sure the deed restrictions are all properly filed, make sure the deed restriction complies with what the zoning board had agreed to, make sure that it's properly signed and and notarized, so that because that would be a part of the condition for approval for a decision. So, and again, that's something that she does without supervision from any part of the chair. It also should be noted that the zoning board is required to be a revenue neutral board. We charge a petition fee. We are in the process right now of increasing that fee because we've looked at our costs and they are not representative of what it costs us for the clerk job, for advertising, for all of, again, the board is free, but everything else costs money. So her position should have no impact on town budget because
Would you be willing to cut her hours then? I mean, when you say it has
no. The fee that we charge is supposed to cover all the cost of the board. And I've already been in front of the select board, and we are now just finalizing what the updated fees will be. Advertising has gone way up, and there's no way we are required to do that.
Right.
Postage has gone up, and obviously, her just having a clerk has gone up. I've gone over this we had a zoning board meeting a couple weeks ago, and we went all through this, and it was the unanimous agreement of all the board members that Maria really goes far beyond what we would expect, what we hired her to do. If you remember what I read in the beginning, she's gone way beyond that, and it's not just because she's capable of doing it. The board needs, things are getting more complex, and we need somebody who can handle that complexity, not just a clerk. I need somebody who can talk face-to-face with a lawyer, can understand what a lawyer's talking about, can relay that to the board so that then we can make decisions. Mm-hmm. It's just, like I said, things are just getting more complex. And the impact, if we're wrong, is we get sued. And nobody wants that. You know how much that costs. We've only had one petition that was, that we had to go to court over. And it was going to go to court whichever way we ruled. So,
right.
But because we tend to make sure that the decisions that we make have a basis in law, not just on gut feel. And sometimes there's a fine line in there. It's because we are an appeals board, it's already been proven that you did something that you weren't supposed to do. But there's rationale for that, and there's, and there's laws on how to handle that. So getting it right the first time is really, really important for the town, because litigation is not something, you guys were just talking about that.
Right.
Litigation is not something you really want to do.
Right.
It's really, really expensive. So having somebody like Maria essentially as our only paid person who has an idea of the legal aspects about this and knows zoning is really, really important. Matter of fact, if we were ever to, and we cannot afford to lose Maria. We just cannot afford to lose her. If we were to ever have to re-advertise, I would have to rewrite this job description, because right now this job description does not really adequately identify the kind of person that we need in order to keep the zoning board of appeals functioning properly.
Okay. Why don't we open it up for questions? Gary, you're the senior member on the personnel board. Do you have any questions?
Well, I just have a few comments here. I appreciate the description that you gave us here of the person that we're trying to maybe reclassify as they're requesting. I would have liked to see some metrics on not the person, but on the position itself, and what that entails. So you said that you're increasing, there are applicants the applications are increasing. What does that look like? What did that look like over the last 2-3 years? Are you seeing a specific category increase? Are you seeing, if you can talk to that, even if we don't have it on
I can
paper.
talk to it, yes. One of the, about 5 years ago, the town passed a zoning amendment to allow for a detached accessory apartment, which was a good thing. It allows, you have an elderly parents that you don't want to put them in a nursing home, you want them on your property, but, or you have a needy, a handicapped child that, that, again, it's, you can still have quality of life on your property. Also, it allows extra income so that a family can still stay in Westport, not sell their house, get a little bit of income off an accessory apartment. Well, the accessory apartment comes with 15 requirements. Understanding each of those 15 requirements and how to comply with those is what we spend probably 3/4 of our time at. We've been inundated the past 3 years anyway with special permits for accessory apartments. And I think that's a great idea. I think that's great because then it allows our residents to stay in Westport, not have to sell your house because you can't afford it, or because, your elderly parents, you don't want to, put them in a nursing home, or it just makes things life a whole lot easier. But there's a lot of things that go that are involved in that, and she, those are some of the things that she works with us to help resolve.
So that's being one. Now, are there others like that you can name that might be like a second
one would be
most,
findings. Westport zoning didn't come into effect until the 70s. Actually, there was a 50s version, but mostly in the 74 was when we actually had zoning. So if you had property before that, then it could be a postage stamp and you were fine because it wasn't zoned. So right now, in order to have a house, you need 60,000 square feet. You need to have 100-foot frontage. There's all these requirements if you want a house in Westport today. Well, people come in with a property that had a house on it from the 50s or for the 20s that only had 10,000 square feet, and they want to now modify it somehow. Well, that's called non-conforming property. And in order to modify a non-conforming property, you need a finding from the Zoning Board of Appeals that what you're doing is appropriate. And that can be a tricky situation, and we do get a lot of those because there's a lot of property that were pre-zoning. So they do not meet any of the requirements. So those get to be kind of a little tricky at times, and sometimes we need legal help. And again, that's where Maria helps us out to walk through that.
How much of the time would you say is spent on residential compared to commercial?
Very little commercial, almost none.
So it's mostly all residential.
It's almost all residential. It's like I said, it's 3/4 accessory apartment. We get very few variances. Which is really thankful because those are difficult. We get findings. We get administrative appeals, which just means that Ralph Souza, our building inspector, he refused something, and the petitioner comes in and says, I think he's wrong. And then we have to adjudicate between, did the building inspector really abide by the regulations? And again, that's another one that can be a little bit tricky, because some of the regulations are not necessarily razor thin. You know, there's some room for
Interpretation?
interpretation.
You're right,
yes. Right, yes. Yeah, very, very, I mean, it's funny, because like when I first started years ago, they were, most of our hearings were fairly straightforward. Like I said, the past 3 years, and I've been chair for the past 3 years, maybe it was because I was chair, that all of a sudden things were coming to me more complex. Well, anyway, sometimes it takes hours, and sometimes we have to continue it 2 or 3 or 4 times just so that we get all the facts, and we have to hear all of the evidence, we have to hear all the abutters. It's, you know, sometimes it gets to be very, very complicated, and in order to do due diligence, we need to hear all of it, and in a lot of cases, we need advice from town council, and how to do that requires somebody like a Maria as our interface.
So you utilize town council, you have your own council?
We have town,
Also.
no, we have town council.
You use town council? The board doesn't have its own council?
No. No, we go to town council. Yes. Generally, we go to Jeff Blake. He's our town council, and he's the one who is knowledgeable about zoning issues.
Nancy, you have questions?
I do, thank you. So in comparing this to the job that you see it being, which is an admin assistant, so I'm looking at the one that we have as an example for the, I don't know if it's Board of Selectmen, who this is.
Yes.
The Board of So it strikes me that because the Board of Selectmen's job description here is very comprehensive, and it strikes me that their admin assistant sort of operates at a higher level than perhaps what, at least from my understanding, what Marie's doing. So I just have some questions on that.
Okay.
So for instance, like the admin assistant that they have, like they're doing budget tracking, they're monitoring whole application processes, they're updating websites,
Yep.
producing letters,
Yep.
for actually processing requests. It just strikes me from the new duties for Maria, a lot of it is, there is some liaising, which is obviously self-directed, and she has to call upon knowledge that she has. But it's mostly like providing documentation, like managing information requests. So I was just wondering if you can talk about sort of what I perceive as the gap between those two, which is the admin assistant is doing a lot more sort of higher skill work. But perhaps you can talk about that.
Which higher skills would you?
So the admin assistant for at least the selectmen, so I have here, they update the website for the Board of Selectmen.
Well, obviously she does that. She has to do that.
She does that as well.
Yes, but I consider that to be a clerical job.
And sort of preparing budgets.
Yes, she
paying
does that.
expenses. Maria does that too.
Yes, she does.
So it's budgets, producing letters.
Yes.
She does that too.
Yes.
Balancing expense budgets for the Board of Selectmen, this person does. With the town accountant's records. Like
By the way, I give you one example. We had we just finished. We had an appeal, and as part of the appeal, there was conditions that had to come in front of the zoning board of appeal again for approval. It was not going to be a hearing. It was just going to be some minor details of the appeal that the board had to grant. We had a hearing and we granted it, and then she wrote the letter, just from in legal words. I mean, we couldn't do that as the board because I'm not a lawyer. I don't know, but she could respond directly to the essentially to the courts with the approval from the zoning board in the right legal terminology.
Thank you, that's good. And so the other point about like tracking, like all the applications you get, like not only does she guide them on completing it so that you have a full and complete packet, but does she track any of them in some way and notify people? Is that part of her duty?
She actually has to keep a timeline of everything that's going on, because like I said, she's got 14 days. She has to advertise twice. She has to keep a timeline of when, when the documents come in, when they get sent out to the board. She actually has to arrange for all the board members to meet. Because when a petition comes in, she has to then poll all of this, say, I've got a petition, I've got to do this within 45 days. How about, December, no, not the 25th, let's see, pick another day. Is everybody good for that day? And if that's not, then she works with the board for she gives alternate dates, and everybody has to abide by that. And then she schedules the hearing here. She has to then gather all the documents. I mean, everything is on a really fairly strict schedule that she has to, that she's the only one that manages it.
She's managing it. Okay. Thank you. That answers my questions.
Greg, did you have anything you wanted to ask right now?
Yeah. First of all, I apologize for being a little late. Came up last minute. But I heard you mention that she goes above and beyond. Are you relating that to her level of responsibility, or are you relating that to her workload?
Oh, in both cases, but certainly the level of responsibility. When we hired her, we had a job description of what she should be doing. Over the past 4 years, that level of complexity and the level of not the hours per se, but the kinds of job that she's doing is far beyond what we had originally, what was originally in her job description. So she's doing a much more, like you would say, a much higher level job. Working directly with our lawyers, working directly with the lawyers from the petitioners. Writing letters. I mean, and there's a lot of things that she does that is beyond, the clerical position that we had originally hired her to do. She's putting in more hours, it's really, the Zoning Board of Appeals is not a meet once a month kind of a board. It's an appeals board. So we might have meetings, 3 weeks in a row, and then not have another one for 2 months. It's an appeal. When we get a petition in, we schedule a meeting.
Similar to this board. We do not have regularly
Right.
scheduled meetings,
Right.
only those that come.
I mean,
Right.
we generally,
On demand.
we've been averaging certainly more than once a month. Say once a month is, we generally get somewhere in the 15 to 20 petitions in a year. That's kind of our workload.
How does that compare to like 2 years ago?
It's been fairly, it's increasing, but not dramatically. What's increasing is the complexity of we've had some that have taken sometimes 4 or 5 meetings just to hear everybody in the audience and to work with a lawyer, because again, if these were easy, if it was an obvious decision, it wouldn't take that long. Some of these actually take the lawyer time to actually work out what the correct response is. So it's just that things are getting, like I said, are just more complex. People are, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing or not. It's just the fact, it's just the way it is. And I think we're getting into, like I said previously, we may be, and I wouldn't say we're not going over, in due diligence, we are trying to make sure we make the right decision. We don't just make a snap decision. If we're not sure, we'll consult the town council. And that, because again, we're very subject to being appealed. And that isn't good for anybody. So making sure we get this right the first time is important. And even if we are appealed, it certainly, having all the documentation, having having everything in line with rationale for why we did everything, really is important for the town case.
How long has she been an employee?
How long has she been? 4 years. She was a town employee years ago as the zoning board clerk. So she has a lot of experience. She's also worked in, for a lawyer for
Has she
years.
ever been reclassified before?
No,
So you put her in as a principal clerk?
yes.
So I'm going to read to you the job description of the assistant town planner. And I think that you'll see that, I think many of the characteristics of Maria will, let me see if I have another copy I can give to you. So the assistant town planner, the assistant planner two, I'm not going to read this verbatim, works under the direction of the town planner, performs responsible tasks of a complex nature which require the exercise of judgment and initiative in conformance with state and local laws related to subdivision, site plan, special permit regulation, and certificates of decision. Makes contacts with developers, contractors, other town departments, and general public. Access to confidential information. Negligible physical effort, performs clerical duties of varied and responsible nature. Advises applicants regarding submission requirements, reviews applications, plans, and other submissions for subdivision approval, special permits, site plan waivers, lots not required, all those things related to that. Oversees the circulation of plans among town departments, corresponds with applicants to ensure effective processing of plans and completeness, drafts and oversees preparation and filing of planning board's decisions, ensures proper recording of approved subdivisions, monitors completion status of subdivisions, etc., attends meeting of other boards, responds to inquiries from the public regarding subdivision control, zoning bylaws, and related matters, supervises planning board clerical staff in the absence of the town planner, fulfilled legal notice timeframes, schedules hearing, meeting dates in conformance with statutory deadlines, prepare meeting agenda for the board, post meetings, plans, and hearing notices and newspaper advertisements, prepares vouchers for the town accountant, other tasks, and it goes on, assists with administrative technical functions, collection of data for the preparation of the department budget, an annual report, inspects sites of proposed development, staff reports, prepares draft motions for the planning board to consider for adoption, prepares reports and documentation required for release of building lots and subdivision. This is a very responsible position as well, that of the assistant planner. I guess what I'm getting at is that, is there any middle ground here as to where we could reclassify your position such that it's not an administrative assistant? I mean, we'll cut to the chase here. The difference in salary is a 30% increase in the current salary of Maria if it went to the administrative assistant. So it's about a $7 an hour increase. I think Gary and I would speak for the finance committee. I don't think there's going to be any generosity in the budgets this year at all.
She's a part, this is gonna cost you less than $1,000, or that kind of money.
Well,
Is
I
that,
mean, it's all relative. I mean, but
she's a
but-
part-time person.
Right, I understand that,
Right.
but it sets a new bar. It sets a new grade and a new level. The assistant town planner will be in here next week saying, I want my position upgraded from what's now a $24 an hour position to that's comparable. The other non-union positions would also be, so
But
this
that's a full-time person.
is a full-time person.
And the planning board actually has 2 clerk positions.
And and that person supervises.
So you got 2 people doing what a part-time person does for the zoning board.
I'm basing on the job
Yes,
description.
right, yes.
That's all I can base it on. So, it creates a difficult situation, given the budget issue that we're gonna be faced with, and given, I'm not refuting the excellent job that Maria does at all. I'm told that she does excellent work. I'm just trying to find some middle ground here, or some position that does not create a very big problem for the town in other respects. I know in your budget, it's a relatively small budget. I think your budget is under $10,000 a
It's
year.
roughly 10,000.
Right, it's about 10,000.
Yes,
Your income prior to your raise and increase in fees is about $6,000. That's how much you turned
Yes.
into the town accountant
yes,
last year.
yes.
So, it still creates an issue in a budget year that has an awful lot of austerity stamped all over it. So,
But our fees are going up from 300 to 500,
right.
and for some areas, from 300 to 2,500.
Right. But you don't
So-
operate as an enterprise fund. I mean,
No,
so.
but the whole idea is, it is supposed to be revenue neutral. Now, that's
Right.
hard to do because over time,
Right.
we don't change the fees every other week.
Yeah,
It's-
I see, I
We haven't changed the fees in
saying. I
15 or
understand what
20
you're
years.
Right.
Cindy, can I ask a question?
Sure,
So I know we've got a chart here
right,
from Jim.
right.
So if in fact we were to reclass this, let's say we were to reclass it to whatever we want to call it, what is her salary now
I think
per
It's
hour,
a-
and what
around
will
20.
it be?
Well, it's the 2297, I believe. It's the third or fourth one.
2297.
Okay,
So
so it's
the-
2297, and what's
Right.
the proposal?
The administrative assistant position is what, 2945?
Is there a range on that, or is there only a fixed number?
There's only a fixed number that I know of.
Okay. I mean, somebody comes in, they just get one number, there's no,
Well,
usually
differently than, if you hire the the town
Yeah, I don't think
administrators
there's any
once.
steps or.
There are no steps in that
There's no
position.
steps, it's just a pay rate. But I guess a couple of comments I have, and maybe some suggestions, is that, there are a lot of clerks in the town right now that I think that may feel that they are, underpaid or and have been for quite some time, that position being one of them. And I think it behooves, not this board, but maybe some pressure from this board to look at the whole town. And this is what we struggle with if you're on this committee. You struggle with the one-offs. You're coming in, as Cindy mentioned, someone else will come in. And I think that over time, that does not only just do a disbenefit to the employees, but also to the town, because now you struggle with other communities that are competing.
yes.
And you don't want to lose these people because they're
Yes.
good workers.
Right.
And that's, that's what we struggle with in municipal government.
Yep.
No one ever thought 20 years ago that we would be competing with towns to our left and our right.
Mhm.
That's the case.
Mhm.
So what really scares me even more than this is that there's a liability to this position. And if in fact there's a mistake, it could cost us more than $1,000.
Hmm.
And that's in the back of my mind. So I think that has to be taken into consideration. Even though the assistant planner position, we're trying to compare job descriptions, in my opinion, there isn't much of a legal issue if something goes wrong here on this. If the assistant planner position there's an error,
Mhm.
the liability isn't as much as it would be if this position caused an
Right.
error.
Yes.
So we have to also take that into consideration. If this was a full-time position, I probably would not recommend
Yep.
going to the full amount.
Right.
But because it's a part-time position, maybe we can, and I don't know if we have the ability to, go to maybe a little bit lower than this, so that
Right,
we're
well,
not.
that's what I'm thinking, that if there's some middle ground here somewhere,
Yeah, and I
and
don't know if we have
perhaps
the ability to do
changing,
that.
changing the classification from that other than administrative assistant.
Like supervising clerk?
Yeah, I mean, the line's gonna be out the door.
Yeah, I don't know if we have the ability to lower them.
Yes, but how
Pay
many
rate.
other positions do you have,
Right.
you're talking about, the legal impacts of, if things are not done, and every time we have a hearing, we are subject to being appealed. That is the fact of life. No matter which way we go, whether we approve, whether we grant or reject, we are always subject to an appeal. That's everybody's right. So we have to always consider, we don't consider that, how do I say this? we don't look at a petition saying, wow, this one can be appealed. What we look at it is, we do our best to make sure that we are following the regulations, and that we have enough supporting evidence to support our position, so that A, we don't get appealed, and B, if we do get appealed, that it becomes a favorable for the town. So,
Well, I
and that's
think-
really important, because.
Well, then why couldn't we classify or suggest or recommend an appeals clerk? I mean, so that comes with it. I mean, you've used the word appeal a number of times in your description, such that it kind of puts it in a class of its own. That the person would have to have familiarity and knowledge base of the appeal process, of everything that goes along with that. So, I mean, if it's going to be, this has to go before town meeting anyway. Even the change in classification has to be approved by town meeting. So if it's going to be approved by town meeting, we could create a new classification.
Yeah, we'd have to ask if that can be done. I'm not sure, I'm
Right.
not sure off the top of my head. But you mentioned about the revenue that's being brought in.
Mhm.
So you're now looking to raise that. Have
Yes.
you done a comparison to other communities
Yes.
and what they
Oh, yeah,
charge?
we're
Yes, we're low.
woefully
Way more,
beyond.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have actually. I've looked at.
Can we raise it any more than what you're recommending?
What we are doing, all right, so for years it has been $300 for all petitions. And there's all different kinds of petitions that we hear, 20 different kinds. I have looked at many of the surrounding communities, and they go, there's one that's in our area, maybe 250, but they also have other costs. Some go up to 1,000. It's all over the place. They're all over the place. What we have done is in order to be revenue neutral, again, we can't raise it to the point of making money on it.
Right, correct.
So what I've done is I've taken a look at the last 3 years. Here's how much it cost us. Here's how much, and here's how many petitions we had. And when you do the math, it comes out to some number. What we've, and that's the number we're using. We're using from 3 to 500. But one of the things that we've added to it is it's $500 for a petition. But if you, as a petitioner, force us to continue the hearing more than once, then it's $100 per continuance, because that costs the town money. And we allow them one continuance, because a lot of times they'll come in and they don't have quite all the documentation. So it's just fair to just say, we'll hear it one more time. Also, generally, we will hold, a lot of times, I said most of the time, we will hear 2 petitions a night. Now, even if both of them get continued, but they're both resolved the second month, then on average, we did 1 a month. And it's not extra charge. So, but going past that incurs an extra cost to the town, and the petitioner should be required to pay that as being revenue neutral. We didn't want to increase it. If we actually did the math and figured out including our legal fees, it would be a higher number. But adding on the extra $100 for every subsequent, and we're going from $300 to $2,500 for things like cell towers and the business ones. The business ones are going way up because those generally take 5, 6, 7, sometimes a year of hearings to like a 40B low-income housing one that we had several years ago. Those take a long time, and it's a lot of legal involvement. So those were going from 300 to 2,500, and the same thing with cell towers. There's a couple of those kinds of ones that we know that are going to not just be your normal, this month, next month, and you're done.
So you feel that that's going to generate enough revenue to cover the expense, including what the
this.
max would be on this?
Yes.
If we went to the max?
Can I ask a question, just to clarify? So the assistant planner here, to my mind, is not a comparable job. I think it muddies the waters. I think it's more comparable to an admin assistant based on what you're saying. And I think perhaps to change the title to suit finances might not be something we want to consider, because I think we should focus on an equitable salary for the job that is in reality, right? So if you believe that it is comparable to admin assistants in other departments, I'd be more in favor of keeping that title and pursuing an upgrade for that if it is a peer, if it is a comparable peer. So that means they have the same skills broadly, the same effort goes into the job, and the same level of responsibility. So that sort of defines it. Also, the planner, requires a bachelor's degree in planning. I don't find it comparable. What I find interesting is that it's actually lower paid than the admin assistant
Right.
for the Board of Selectmen, which troubles me. I almost feel like those two figures should be inverted,
Right.
what their hourly rate is, but it is what it is. I think given that it is more sounding like an admin assistant to my mind, and this comes from being the compensation manager in other state agencies where we've had unit job and grade step tables for admin assistants for clerks. So that's why I was going to town over like the duties, like the web updates, the process, like to what extent do they have independent decision, to an extent decision making, like guiding people in the process, working in a self-directed manner, because clerks typically, it's like, here, do this, fax this,
Right.
file this, do this now. So it does sound, Maria, to my mind, is behaving like more of an influencer, like guiding people through processes which take knowledge that she's earned. So I would be in favor of keeping as an admin assistant rather than changing the titles. The only question to my mind is, what is a fair salary? So it strikes me the admin assistant for the Board of Selectmen is high. So for the admin assistant that I've dealt with in state agencies, around $29, $30 would be a senior admin assistant. That's someone, 10, 15 plus years working for sort of like director level executives. So I do think that's high. And my only question is, what scope do we have to recommend a salary? And like, if there's a bandwidth, how do we find that information if it's available, or we can recommend one?
That's a very good question.
Well, we don't have a range, that's.
Right,
range.
we
It's
don't
never
have a
been
range.
defined. It's not written anywhere what an admin assistant for the town might
It's
earn.
that.
It's just
that-
that.
it's that-
So
it's that-
is
it's
there
that
another
number.
admin assistant, or is this just?
No, the only admin assistant is the one for the Board of Selectmen, I believe.
Right, well, but I believe that it was
But,
cited that the police and fire, but I believe that those are both union positions, so they're a little bit different. The admin assistant for the Board of Selectmen is a non-union position. I
Which
believe
usually
they
pay-
classify the police and fire clerks as administrative assistants, and I'm not sure if the highway department calls, what is the woman's?
April.
April, if her
I think it
position,
might be administrative,
is administrative clerk?
it might be.
And that might be
administrative
like a
clerk.
low level, I say,
Yeah.
like, because
Right.
usually there can even be grades like admin 1,
Correct.
admin 2,
Admin 2,
higher.
right,
But,
So,
but for that example, right there, okay, highway,
Right,
she's involved with a lot of the budgetary stuff, so she's not just it's not just a basic clerk.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
She's involved with
right,
maintaining
when
that
it's
office.
budgets, that's more senior.
If you
Right.
attach-
And expenses.
If you attach the variant as to what department they belong to, you're establishing new admin assistant.
Let
It needs to be admin assistant ZBA.
me make one other observation.
yep.
All the other things you're talking about, the assistant is an assistant to somebody who is paid.
I'm not really sure that's relevant.
Maria is the only person in the zoning board that is paid.
Right.
She is responsible for getting everything done from
Yeah,
the
but
town.
but you as a board, you're also, even though you're not paid, you have an
But-
obligation and
but-
you have a
but-
responsibility.
But yes, we have an obligation to run the meeting. We have an obligation to hear the meeting, and then we go home. And Maria takes care of it, but all the other assistants have somebody that they go to who is responsible for it all, that are paid to do that. In this position, she is the face of the zoning board. She's the only person that people interface with until they sit here in the hearing.
So she's running the show,
She's running the show until we have a hearing.
whereas the other people are more directed and guided on a
Yes.
daily or more frequent basis. about
Because they
what's
are
going
essentially working for a full-time person who is in charge of it.
Now, how many hours a week is she in the office, do you know?
Well, she
Depends.
gets paid, her salary is based on 2 hours a week, two 2-hour days, to be in the office.
Mm.
But that doesn't, so we have to, we add up, we say, okay, as soon as you get a petition in, it takes you so many hours to, process the petition, get out the notices, do it, so there's 3 hours in that. She has to come to the meeting, there's 3 hours for that. She has to write the meeting minutes, there's hours for that. She has to write the decision, there's hours for that. So when I sit down with her and develop the budget spreadsheet for the year, we figure out all those hours, and then we have to estimate how many petitions, because we're petition driven. If we get no petitions, there's no cost, other than our 2 hours. Obviously, that's never gonna
But she
happen.
always has the standard 2 hours per week, no matter
But
what.
she's here 2 hours twice a day, just to be here that petitioners can come in and talk to her and,
Okay.
and work with her and iron out any issues. But other than that, it's, it's based on, how many petitions we get. And, we're never really sitting on our hands. We have a petition tomorrow night, and we had one last week.
Okay.
Did she work more than the 4 hours?
Well, I mean, she is hired part-time, but it, like I said, it's, some months it might be 40 hours, and other months it might be 10, it might be a lot less, because it's driven by how many petitions we have.
I'm more inclined to establish a new classification for her. To establish a range.
I mean, our whole budget is $10,000 a year, including her. Our whole budget,
Short money.
short
Right.
money.
Right, but once again, I mean, rather than lumping it into something else and trying to make it all fit, I mean, I tend to agree with Greg a little bit that there are unique characteristics to this position. And that maybe it would benefit from having a unique classification, rather than administrative assistant.
What do other towns do? Do other towns have a permanent,
That I haven't really looked into. I haven't really looked to see what other
All right,
towns
so
do
let's
for
see
assistance.
if, town of Somerset, let's see if they were there.
I think what would be helpful is a full and comprehensive, job description. It just has everything, and you don't have to follow the admin assistant, but, I think you have to, because it's hard to make a decision because you've left out key things for me, like that if she does the budgets.
Right.
She writes all the letters,
Yes.
and we don't want to shortchange her. I never want to shortchange anybody.
Mm.
So having something comprehensive, and you can use this as a reference to see, because it's got tons of detail in there. And I think only when having a full job description can we define what a title is, an appropriate title,
Mhm.
whether it's admin assistant or something else. Maybe it needs its own title. Maybe it's because that could show us that perhaps it is so quite different from an admin assistant that it is almost like a specialist clerk
Mm.
in some way. I think that will tell us more if we had a full job description. I can help you with that.
So do we have a motion of any type? Do you want to continue this, get some additional information?
I think it's hard to reclassify a job without a full job description.
So you need something
so,
to fit into that.
I mean, I would make a recommendation if we're gonna look at this further, that, I mean, you've done a pretty good job with listing what her duties are. I mean, I would expand on that for
Yeah.
a classification, like a,
Well, yeah,
job
I can take, and again, there's some things that I didn't add in, just, I had the things that I thought were important to the functioning of the board, but there's a lot of other background stuff that she has to do,
I would
just,
let her do it first, and then you review it with her, and then add what you think should go in it.
right, I mean, as far as budgets and all the website stuff, she does, I mean, I have no idea I go on it once in a while just to make sure it's all there, but that's about as far as I go. I just make, I just, I peruse the website now and then
It's
just to
just
make
difficult to reclassify something that we don't know what to reclassify.
Yeah, I agree. In the meantime, it could give us, we can check on things like the admin assistant job ranges and other comp ranges.
Right,
that
and
we have.
to perhaps look at some of the other towns to see how they
I'm surprised that the
may-
admin assistant doesn't have a range.
Well,
This story.
Is that right?
Because it's the only one, maybe.
the town administrator doesn't have a range,
Is that right?
yeah.
this gets back to my point of having a comprehensive
Yeah.
study in the town, so that when folks come in, we hire new people, we've already set the range, the Board of Selectmen accepted it, You know, it goes to town meeting, and when it gets easier for this conversation to happen, it gets easier for the conversation to happen when someone gets hired, or when clerks say, I'm being paid more than another clerk. So without a range, this is exactly what we get. And I've been on the finance committee for now almost 9 years, and for the last 5 years, I've tried to encourage this. You know, and being on both committees, you see the disparity.
Right,
And
exactly.
the last thing we want is employees being pinned against each other.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
that's what we don't
Yes,
want.
yes,
Because
yes.
what happens is, it's an exodus.
Yes.
And they go somewhere else.
Right.
And in this market, it's
Right.
wide open.
And that's exactly what I'm hoping that we can avoid.
Right, and that's what we want
Right.
to avoid.
Are the union positions on a set grade and step table, so they've been classified, there are ranges, there are steps, so those are fine, correct? It's just a
I believe they have. I have not seen the union contract as far as how that,
It may
I'm
be,
sure we
but
have.
it may be, but it probably hasn't been addressed
Updated in a while or
in
something.
probably a decade.
I
if
think
not
we
more.
need that,
Right.
because I think every time we meet, we don't have a range
Right,
for anything. And even if it's not for every single job, but
Right.
it may be a project we could put forward.
Mm.
I could do the project, I used to be compensation manager for years, exactly the kind of stuff I used to do.
right.
But it's, it's in my wheelhouse, I'd have the resources
Yeah.
to do it. But I'd be willing to do it if it
Yeah.
comes to that. I think it's a good idea, because I think we need information when we make our decisions.
I mean, we were,
Yeah.
when we first started on this committee, even before Cindy got here, I was on this committee, we were voting on job descriptions without even a salary. We
Right,
never knew what
Yeah.
we were
And it's time
offering
for
somebody.
updated, because the world has moved on, and salary changes, like, we're constantly updating salaries because we need to.
Right.
Mm.
right.
There has
It's-
to be corresponding ranges to
Yeah,
positions.
exactly.
Yeah.
I
Even
mean,
if it's
exactly.
just core titles that we have a lot of, like the clerks, the
Right.
assistants, whatever,
Right.
whatever. we can
And with a
define.
good rate analysis across the town, I'm talking everybody, school department, town side, you then establish good job descriptions off
Right.
of that.
Right.
And you can do that. with
Competitive
the-
ranges.
Right.
Right.
It
Well,
also
I mean,
addresses
we find,
disparities. It
right.
also addresses disparities.
We
This
find that
one's
we
earning more
compete
than that
against
one.
ourselves. I mean, because there are
Right.
people that move
Change jobs.
around
Right, sure.
because
That's
that
right.
position pays more in that
Mm.
department, and even though it's essentially the same job.
Mhm.
We had that happen from town hall to school and,
That's right.
Back
and
and
just
forth, yeah.
down the hall here within the
System
town
quo.
hall.
Let's put it
And
that
then
way.
Right,
if you have
right.
gender differences, then we're in violation of things like the Mass
Right.
Equity Pay Act, the
Right.
MIPA Act. So that throws a different line. And someone could say, well, this person, they're different gender, they're being paid more or less than me,
Right.
and it's because this. So disparity is never a good thing for morale, for
Yeah.
retention, and for risk
Yeah.
issues too.
Yeah, I mean, it
How
keeps
many
coming up
non-union-
more and more.
We don't know how many non-union employees there are.
Off the top of my head, there,
I'd have to say probably maybe 20, 25.
I was just gonna say about 24, yeah.
That's it?
That's not bad.
Yeah, there really aren't that many, because the bulk of the
Yeah, also,
employees
yeah.
are on the school side. So
Mhm.
this committee does not get involved with the non-union school employees. So if you remove that part from the equation and what's left, there's really not that
Yeah.
much, because you've got police, fire,
right.
highway department is union.
They all have their
um,
union tables.
Mm.
Right, so
they
there's
have-
really very few.
Mm.
A lot of them are very part-time. You get the one-offs like the town administrator, the administrative assistant who is non-union. I believe the confidential secretary of the Board of Selectmen is non-union. So it's really those positions, and then everything else after that really becomes
Managerial?
part-time. Yeah, and part-time or managerial, the planning board agent, the town planner is a non-union position. So, yeah, there's probably, 4 or 5 that are
Police chief, fire
managerial.
chief.
Mm.
Right, police chief, fire chief that are, there's probably 4 or 5 in a higher position.
But
And the rest of them are part-time positions that you have to try to fit
Mhm.
into,
Mm.
Maybe we should isolate them and do like desk orders on them.
right, I mean,
I
well, we-
agree this is a niche position. And I
Right.
think it's maybe unique to what we have as boilerplate
Right,
on other job descriptions. And I think that maybe if we received a good, this is a good start. This is definitely a good start.
Right.
We had something in more definitive. We can then say, yeah, okay, yeah, it
Yeah.
belongs in the $29
It'll be
range.
clear.
well, I think
Yeah.
how you have to think about it too is that truly if Maria left tomorrow,
Mm.
what would you want that job description to
Right.
read? How
Yes.
would you want it to read?
Mm.
I mean, you could tailor it to some degree in the duties that she performs, but if you had to replace her,
Mhm.
truly, who are you looking for?
Mm.
What kind of qualifications and duties would you ask a new person
Yeah,
coming
and I think the
in?
liability plays a big piece of this.
Mm.
You know, that, in my mind, you know, if we talk about it, like I said, an administrative clerk, somewhere else, they may not have that responsibility. And
Right.
if this position has that responsibility,
Mm.
then we want to make sure that we're compensating them, because they're almost like a paralegal in
Mm.
my mind. If they're constantly engaging with town council and making recommendations, not to the fact that it's a legal recommendation, but can interpret it,
Mm.
you know, what would it cost the town to get that kind of
Right,
advice?
Right.
A lot more than $29 an hour,
Mm.
in my opinion.
Mm.
Agreed.
so do we have a motion to?
I would make a motion that we let Roger go back and work on a job description, and then he presents it back to us,
Okay.
and that we revisit it and we set the compensation accordingly.
Okay, do I have a second?
We'll see.
Okay, second.
That's it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Same here, unanimous. So, I'm sorry, Roger, you'll have to come back
That's okay. I mean,
another
is this all
day.
stuff that
and-
can be done before the town meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Town meeting's not until
May.
May.
right,
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
right.
yeah. If
So
if-
we have provisions that we can initiate it subject to town meeting, right? That these things can be initiated in advance of town meeting.
uh,
And if it's not approved at town meeting, then from that date forward,
Mhm.
it would have to not be included. Because we have the ability to initiate these things prior to that.
I believe
right?
so, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you came back with a job description, we would review it, and I would suggest at the next meeting, we make, if the
Right,
job description, and we get in
Right.
enough time, we can read it,
right. And give us some time to
look at it, and
Look
we can
at-
make a decision.
look at
then.
some
Right, can we
comparables and
schedule a
whatnot.
meeting?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you right now, it's probably gonna be January.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, January.
Yeah, I don't have my my full
Right.
calendar
My
here,
calendar's
so.
at home.
Yeah,
January.
Well,
we
so I
will-
guess the question is, when can you get us the job description?
As soon as you can have a meeting,
right,
because it
okay,
isn't gonna be before Christmas.
right, okay.
Yeah, no,
Right,
I-
right. And so your meetings are sometimes on Wednesdays. Both Gary and I will be busy with FinCom meetings coming up starting soon.
Yep.
We're almost every Tuesday, maybe every other Tuesday, but almost every Tuesday we're gonna be.
Yeah, I would say every other Tuesday for now,
Right,
and then it might get
right,
to be every
because we're
Tuesday.
starting off a little late.
Yes.
So we'll
I
see
would
if we
say
can.
maybe we can squeeze it in January.
Yeah,
sometime.
maybe like an off Monday when the Board of Selectmen is not meeting on a
Yep.
Monday.
Yep.
Maybe we can slide in here on a Monday.
Mhm.
I don't know what their schedule looks like, but you can kind of think of it in those types
Maybe
of
like the
terms.
Monday after Martin Luther King, that Monday, the next Monday after Martin
Yeah,
Luther
we'll
King.
see how their meetings,
Mm.
I don't know where
Yeah.
their
Where
meetings
theirs-
stack
Or
up
we can
now,
meet down the
so.
hall, I
Or
guess,
you can meet out, down the
Yeah.
hall. So yeah, maybe the Monday after Martin Luther
like the
King.
third Monday in
Use-
January.
Use that one kind of as a target.
Okay.
What are you gonna title it?
I'm just gonna put down this, I mean,
I know, right, maybe we can be creative. And in
do
the
we
meantime,
really
we will
wanna-
look at some comparables, right, as far as like maybe other towns
I
to
think you
see.
should, Roger. Spend the time between now and then drafting it. Don't wait to the last minute to the job description. Have her do it. It's always a good idea to have the person because they can invent things you have no
Yes.
idea that she's doing. Have her draft it. You can review it. Meet with her to review it
Oh, yeah.
and drill down on it. Don't let her shortchange herself. Just throw everything, even if it's stuff that is rubbish that you can
Yep.
check out later.
Yep.
And then you need to propose a title or two. The only thing I wouldn't want to invent titles that are so unique they're never used again if she left it, you know what I mean? Or that if you think the nature of the role of the department will change in the next 5 years, you see it going in a different direction. So sort of like plan that job, like Cindy was saying, not for her, but for the future, like
Mhm.
what your needs are today or for the next 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, if you think admin assistant is appropriate, fine, but it makes me nervous that there's only one other admin assistant,
Yeah.
that's for the selectmen, the very, almost the
Yep.
board of the town.
yes,
But, consider 1 or 2 options, talk to her, and investigate other towns
I'll
and see.
investigate other towns, see.
Investigate, and then come to
But
us
it's
with a
okay to-
proposal.
Just generate a new
I don't know.
job title?
Is that allowable under the bylaws?
I mean, it's still gonna be,
It's gonna
have
go
to
to
be
town meeting.
approved by
Yeah,
town
town
meeting,
meeting.
So it's
so,
gotta go to
It's
town
very
meeting.
Yeah.
ZBA in there.
But
Yeah.
be careful, Joe,
Put the
Roger.
very end of ZBA in there.
Right.
yeah.
Just
Maybe-
consider, if she walked out of the job next year, whether that title's recruitable. Like if you put it in the paper, people are gonna apply for a job that doesn't sound clear, it doesn't say what
Right,
it is.
it wouldn't sound
Sounds-
so,
Because sometimes you struggle with that. I'm an assistant even then. A lot of people are like, oh, it's a secretary, but really she's doing, sounds like more specialized
Right.
work.
Mm.
So just
Right.
consider the practicality of the title.
right,
You know,
yeah,
can bounce
think
ideas off
about it
the
in
table if you
terms,
want.
if you had to go out and find a new person, what
Mhm.
would you want that job to be called?
Well, just as anecdotal, we went for 2 years without a clerk. So I know what the job is
Oh,
because I assume you all know Jerry Catino. He's been around here forever
Oh,
and a
sure,
day.
right,
Well, he and I managed all these efforts for 2 years, and
wow,
I'm not doing it again.
wow,
So you can't lose her.
I am not doing it again.
Right.
It
Right.
is a lot of work.
right,
Sure it is.
I mean, it's, you start to, oh, well, it's just, I mean, how much can it be?
Right.
When you actually have to, put the,
sure.
it's a lot of work.
Right.
And some of it can be very stressful.
Walk a mile in my shoes, right? Now
Right.
you know what
Yeah.
that feels like,
That's
sure,
right.
sure.
Everybody's, it's, oh, my boss has a really easy job. Until you get to be the boss, then you find it's not so easy.
Right, and the other way
And
around.
the other way around.
You think, oh, yeah, it's easy, she gets to do that stuff, yeah, and she gets to do this, that, and the other, until you have to do it yourself. Motion to adjourn? I don't
I make a
believe we
motion.
have any other business in front of the board.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, second? Second, okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay.
Can I get
We
a
are
copy of
adjourned.
sample